Hello everyone, my name is Joy and this is my first art demo video. So welcome to any and all who have joined to watch and maybe learn something new about abstract art or working in a sketchbook. And I just wanted to quickly show something that I have already started working on. And I got the idea of doing the grids actually from several other artists whose work I have seen, and I really love the idea of working in series, and so it makes complete sense, especially working with abstract. If you want to just really get into the whole flow of creation and really give yourself some time to spend kind of working, going back and forth between several different pieces, that really is the best way, I feel personally, to work on anything abstract, is to work on more than one piece at a time. So I have here one that has already been started that still needs more work to be done on it. And before I continue working on this, I just wanted to show a previous grid abstract page that at this moment in time I considered to be complete. Whether or not I still feel that way a month from now is something different. A lot of times I do look at my work a month later, a year later sometimes, and I'll suddenly see something that I really would like to add, something that I might want to change. So that's normal. That's just part of the process, especially working abstractly. So don't be surprised if that happens to you. So with this page, what I did, instead of drawing the rectangles for my grids for my series, I actually bought craft paper labels. It comes in a roll and they're just little rectangles. They're about like 2 inches by 4 inches or something of that nature. I didn't actually measure that. And so you just peel and stick, that's all. They're like labels. And so I just started with that as a base. I thought it would be nice to try drawing on a colored ground. Sometimes working on a blank white page is a little bit intimidating, so anything that we can do to immediately kind of, give ourselves a jump start, and so we're not facing that blank white page. And so working with just some type of a colored ground, a colored background, whether you're doing a quick painting of a page, just a solid block of color first, or something of this nature. And it really could be any kind of paper, and you just want to put down that base first, as your first layer to start. And then the next step is really to grab some type of art material and go ahead and put down your first marks. So mark making is a really big thing for abstract art. Thinking about different materials and tools that you can make marks with. So it could be charcoal pencils. It could be like, this is a General's carbon sketch, which I love because it is a charcoal pencil, but it's very much water soluble. So you can go in with your wet brush and just go over the top of your marks. You can also do a little smearing or smudging just with your fingers without water too, to begin with. So that's all I started with, was just this sketch and wash pencil. I made a few quick random lines for the most part. I'm not really thinking about it. I'm just going in and just quickly making marks. And then I took just some plain water and went over those marks very quickly. And then after that, there's lots of options. You could go ahead and pick up a colored pencil or an oil pastel, or I have these, this is very popular now, these Stabilo woodies. They're very soft and creamy, a lot like an oil pastel. And so you can just take this and go in and kind of doing the same thing where you're making a mark, possibly just laying down color, coloring in a particular area. You're not overthinking, you're really just responding intuitively to what's already there, just whatever in the moment you're looking at and feeling like, oh yes, I think we need this color in here. And it really is a lot about working intuitively and not really engaging your brain so much. This is actually quite fun, almost like, pretending you're a child and you're just exploring, you're discovering your art materials, you're enjoying the feel of the materials, the feel of the paper, you're enjoying what happens when you make these marks or when you put this color down. You're really just exploring and enjoying. And so I'm just going to quickly add a little bit. This first one hasn't had very much done to it yet, so really want to make sure I'm not completely forgetting about this first rectangle here. And you do want to, if you're working with color, think about your colors a little bit ahead of time. So you might decide you're only working with one or two colors, or maybe you only want to work with warm colors, which would be yellow, orange, red, pink, think the sun or fire. Or you might decide to do cool colors, which would be your blues, greens, and purples. So just have a very quick kind of idea in your head before you start, so you have an idea of the direction you're going in color-wise. It's also good sometimes to limit your color choices, your color palette. So maybe only working with two colors plus black. A lot of times those limits actually make the creativity just kind of explode out a little bit more. It's really funny how that works, but it is a common thing, and I find it works all the time for me. The more limits or the more sort of rules that I'm placing on myself when I'm working kind of really pushes me, and it really makes the work, I think, a lot stronger to do that. So go ahead and try in your own work, maybe thinking about just picking one or two colors, or sticking, like I said, with maybe a warm color palette. So then the next thing that you can think about is papers. You can collage when you're working abstractly. It's a really lovely thing to do, and it could be any type of papers whatsoever. So I have a few different types of papers here. There's lots of these wonderful papers that you can actually purchase that look really old, like music sheets or old newspaper headlines, and they have that real antique-y, lovely look to them. Some of these papers are of Van Gogh's work. Some of it is just random, different colors. They have textures, so it looks like crumpled paper, or like wet paper, or like maybe somebody spilled something on the paper. So you get all these really interesting papers that it's great. You can just go on Amazon.com or go to an art supplies website, and you can find these types of papers quite easily now. And it does cut back on the amount of time that you would otherwise spend on creating your own types of papers like this. Although that's fun to do too. You certainly, can do that sort of thing. You can actually, get a real newspaper and use that in your collage by all means, or buy a magazine and tear out pages from your magazine. And then another thing that I love to do is to get different kinds of papers, whether it's watercolor paper, or in this case, this is tissue paper. And I'll paint on them, and I'll make it just, again, very loose, just really, really fast, because this is also going to be part of my collage. So I'm making my own collage paper, and it's really quite fun to do this, actually. This one was just markers, so I just did those stripes with markers. And then the rest of these are actually gouache, and I have a beautiful set of gouache color paints here that I recently discovered. I absolutely love this paint. Kimmy is the brand name here, and I bought the large set because, oh my goodness, when you see this, how could you not buy this? I mean, look at all of these gorgeous, yummy colors. And it's, I guess they call this jelly gouache. So it's a slightly thicker consistency than watercolor gouache. And it's just really, it's creamy, and it lays down very smoothly. It dries pretty quickly. It's just so much fun to work with. And I'm so happy that I discovered these types of jelly gouache to work with. And then I also have lots of other kinds of paints. So I do have watercolor gouache. So this is a very beautiful, super, super light pastel, kind of a pink peach watercolor gouache, and I actually use that here in these first two boxes in my bottom row, and I really am loving how that works. I have water-based oil paints as well, which is the recent thing I discovered. When I grew up, I learned with regular oil paints, and even though I love the smell of linseed oil, and it's very nostalgic to me to work in traditional oil paints, it kind of smells up the house a bit. So I am very happy to have discovered oil paints that are water-based, so that I don't have that smell in the house. So I have those, and I still absolutely love working in oil paints. Just the way the colors blend and mix together, you just can't beat it. I absolutely love it. And then of course I have traditional acrylic paints. I'm using Liquitex acrylic medium for gluing down the collage papers. I am using the basic acrylic gesso for not only a white ground, if I was to start with that, but also I mix it in with other colors just to either thicken a paint up or give it a creamier texture, or to make a very light pastel shade. I use it as basically my white. Yeah, this is just, a very intuitive and fun process. And it's great to have, all your supplies around you, or at least within reach. So when you're doing abstract, you really want to just constantly be taking this, that, and the other thing, and just really playing with how these different mediums can flow into each other on top of one another and just create those beautiful layers. I did use a piece of the antiqued store-bought paper here. I just tore it. I used the gel medium to glue it down. And then I used the tissue paper over here on the first box. And what's really interesting with this is that you really, in the end, can't even tell that that was tissue paper that was put down because it just looks like paint. There's a little bit of texture, like if you were to touch it, there is some wrinkling from the tissue paper. So it's not that much, it's a little bit, but basically when you're looking at it, it really doesn't even look like that was a paper. It just looks like paint that was put down, which I find very interesting. I know part of that is because of that brown craft paper label that I started with. That's part of the reason, I think, why it has that look to it. It's really cool. I really, really love it. So yeah, let's do a little bit more with this now. And I want to glue some more of that tissue paper down in the other squares there, I think. And I do want to try a brighter, bolder piece. And I had used some gold paint on this, and I think I really want to see how that is going to look. I'm going to keep a warm color palette, so we're going to keep with yellow, orange, pink. We're going to keep in that kind of a line with the coloring, but I really want to see what happens when we glue this shiny metallic gold down. And also because the paint's a lot brighter. So let's see. I think we're going to go even smaller with these pieces. Yeah. And so I'm just kind of looking around and seeing where I think I might like to see this. And I'm thinking we're going to go, since there's not a whole lot that was done with this first box, I'm thinking we're going to just do a little work on that. We're going to go with that one. So I'm taking the acrylic gel medium and just quickly dabbing that onto the back of the piece we're collaging down, just spreading it. This is like our glue, but we're also going to put this on top as well. So then, all right, I think we're doing this placement. And then I'm just going to go right over the top again with that gel medium. It helps the paper to adhere permanently, gives it a nice gloss or sheen, just makes it much more permanent. And interestingly, the medium will pick up that charcoal pencil as I'm brushing over the top. It's picking up that paint a little bit and moving that out off the paper and onto that brown background as well. And I like that. See, and these are the happy things that you discover when you're working with several different mediums all at once. You have all these interesting little discoveries and things. And so I think this is also going to look like it's not paper that was glued down, that it's just paint, because it is picking up and pulling the paint out. It's kind of really looking like it's only paint and not paper. That's so interesting. I love that. I'm just going to lift this up a little bit higher so you can just see that, I hope, a little better. So there's some really interesting wrinkles from the tissue paper that have happened, and you know, just the spreading of the color, the mixing in with the charcoal and the craft paper. What a cool effect that is. I love that. Absolutely love that. So let's go ahead and do another piece of that. And I'm going to make this a little smaller. Just going to play around with placement at first until I find something that I'm relatively happy with. And again, I'm not really overthinking it, you know, I'm really being very intuitive with it. I mean, I do think a little bit about design. You know, I do think about things like having both large and small shapes, having a contrast from black to color or from pattern to no pattern. Contrast actually will help your pieces to look more dynamic and interesting. So I do, of course, think a little bit about that. But because this is really just playing as well, and this is in a sketchbook, remember, too. So, I mean, really, it doesn't have to be so precious. It doesn't have to be like, this is a finished painting and, oh, it has to be absolutely perfect. Oh, that is really nice. See, it picked up with the gel medium, picked up the paint off of the tissue paper and moved it up into the upper region and mixed with the charcoal. That is very, very interesting. So yeah, you know, just play. Yeah, play. Have all these happy little discoveries. And you know, change up your brush stroke, right? If you're always, you know, doing long strokes, maybe try dabbing really short little dots or very short strokes. You know, switch up like what you're doing, and that'll of course create much more interest within a piece as well, to have that, again, contrast. So I'm very happy with that one as well. If you can see that. Yeah, very, very happy with that. I know I don't have the best lighting. I don't have one of those giant O-ring lights yet. Hopefully in the future I'll have one. I don't have one as of yet. So if it's a little bit dark, I do apologize. Okay, so these two, we need to do something more with those. And I'm going to look at the other papers and see what I can find. And I do want to stay in that warm color range. So that's a nice match there. It's kind of a pinky, purpley, mauve kind of thing. I think I like that. So let's look at that. Do we want to do floral? Maybe. Okay. So maybe we'll think about that. Working in there. And I'm just pulling things out. I don't know that I'm going to use all of those or all three of those yet. So, but I've pulled out 3. And so now I'm just thinking, and again telling myself this is just play, so let's not overthink. So I'm going to take a corner of this. So we have those pinkish flowers. Those are very pretty, and I'm thinking we're putting that up near the top there. Yes, I like that. Okay, so just again dabbing our gel medium. That's our glue. Sticking that down. And then just going over the top again with the gel medium. And isn't that interesting because the pink from the Stabilo Woody crayon and the black line from the charcoal pencil almost looks like another flower from the pattern on that paper. You see how it looks like it is a part of it, how it goes. So that is really cool. You know, it's just wonderful when you have these happy discoveries, happy little accidents, happy little whatever you wish to call them. I think I like that. Yeah, that's really very nice. And maybe we'll do the other floral paper because it's a much smaller, tinier floral. So we're getting repetition, which is also another great thing to have going on. But we're changing it a bit. So even though it's flowers, it's much smaller. And there's a little bit of green in here, which is a cool color, but there is also a bit of like that brown that the craft paper has. There's also a bit of that in this with the pink flowers. So I think it is a nice match. And I'm just going to go, I think, a little smaller. And let's, yeah, okay. So when you're doing your own, there's really no quote unquote right or wrong way to do things. Yes, you can think about following the principles of design, but again, if this is your sketchbook, you don't need to overthink. You don't need to sit there and really analyze and say, am I doing this, this, and this? Unless you love doing that sort of thing. By all means, I'm not going to stop you. Go right ahead and overanalyze as much as you want if that's your thing. But really, honestly, truthfully, and if you're an artist, you know this anyway. You know, the sketchbook is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a place for exploration and discovery. Yeah, so always keep that in mind. Ah, yes, very nice. Very, very nice. I'm loving that. So now let's look at this one and think about this one. We haven't used this yet. And I'm thinking this is not going to be the only kind of paper that gets put down, but I'm going to start with this. And that's too big. So I'm going to go with a skinnier piece, moving it around. Might even go smaller. Yes, we're going with that. There we are. All right. It's very subtle, which is quite lovely. And if we do that tiny floral paper color, this would be a nice little contrast. A nice little pop of brightness. It's not overly bright, but definitely much brighter than everything else that's in there. So I'm now going to go on a diagonal just to kind of give it some emphasis, the placement being near the middle, plus the fact that it's a little bit lighter than everything else. We'll give it just a little bit more emphasis, a little bit more of an importance. So you know, your eye goes to that because it's the brightest point in that particular picture. And we still need something more happening in there. All right, so let's look maybe again at our tissue paper. I'm thinking going into the yellow and the gold. Okay, so let's start with that. Let's see how we go. And one of the reasons why I decided I wanted to do this little demo video is because I've really enjoyed watching other artists doing demo videos. There's something soothing about just watching either color being laid down or watching somebody draw something. I just love it. And of course, I love seeing other artists process how they work, what they're thinking about, getting new ideas, seeing other materials. And it's a wonderful way, I think, of sharing ideas, sharing materials, sharing experiences. And like I said, I just find it so soothing. You know, I could watch somebody just like apply paint back and forth across a page and just watch them do page after page of just paint, 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 paint. I don't know. That's probably an artist thing. It's crazy. I do find it so soothing. So I hope watching me do all of these little tiny bits and bobs here brings you some type of pleasure, because I know it's bringing me pleasure doing it. So I'm really hoping that you guys are going to enjoy this. And I'm going to do another little piece at the bottom with the orange. And if your tissue paper rips a little bit, you know what? That's just part of the fun of it. That's just part of, you know, the happy accidents. You know, stuff happens, and it really a lot of times can end up making a piece have a lot more characteristic, a lot more interest, you know, because the things that add interest to a piece are texture, lots of values in color, so from light to dark, contrasts between shapes, contrasts between colors, contrasts between pattern and no pattern. All kinds of things like really add to making something interesting to look at. You know, you want your eyes to kind of have some place to go, things to look at, things to explore, and be like, oh, look at that right there. You know, you're kind of discovering. You're discovering not only as you make, but you're discovering as you're looking as well. Um, you know, and that's the fun thing about abstract art is that you're inviting the viewer to participate with you. You're inviting the viewer to go on a journey of discovery and get excited about the things that they might see and find. And they might be surprised, you know, in different areas. They're going to be surprised by things that they're finding. And it's exciting. And every time you look at a piece, you might find something different. And that's the fun thing about abstract art. There's really so much to it. And you can really just kind of sink into the experience of it. Not only the experience of making, but the experience of looking. And I think that for now, we're going to stop for today and quite possibly I will come back to this on another day and add some more to it. But for today, I think we're going to say, okay, we're going to walk away from this for now. And I thank you guys so much for joining me on this, my first adventure into video demos. And have a wonderful time doing your own explorations. Thank you so much.